Hi, it's Ian, and I'm going to show you a way to make people pay attention to you. Now, I often speak about ways to tell your story so that people will listen. Everywhere you look these days, it seems there are people with really good stories to tell, people who are working on really interesting things, who are getting frustrated because they can't find a way to make people pay attention to them. People are busy and distracted, and it can just be so hard to cut through the noise. Now, I've got an idea that I've been developing that I want to share with you now. This whole thing started when I was looking at a book about how they produce Hollywood movies. It turns out that one of the tropes of Hollywood movies is how characters will often have these hidden emotional triggers that make them just fly off the handle. So, as an example, in Forrest Gump, Forrest will go berserk whenever someone is mean to Jenny, the woman he loves. In Back to the Future, anyone who calls Marty McFly chicken will get a punch in the face.
Nobody calls me chicken.
Nobody calls me chicken. And in the movie Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, woe betide the person who calls Bernadette by her birth name, Ralph. Now, script writers have a name for this. It's called the berserk button. And it's very well known amongst Hollywood script writers. And the reason it's such a commonly used plot device is that everybody has these berserk buttons in life. And if you're selling things to professionals, or if you need to get in front of people for your business, your audience will definitely have these berserk buttons as well. Issues and triggers that, when you just mention them, gets people to wake up and pay attention. Now, you can take this idea of berserk buttons and many other core emotional triggers to create messaging that describes your business and creates a strong bond with your audience. Now, I would say this is by a long way the most important discovery I've made on my journey of helping others reach the people that they need to reach. For example, one of the core emotions is being misunderstood. You will never meet a profession that doesn't feel misunderstood in some way. There's a really popular meme that you see floating around online called "What My Friends Think I Do" versus "What I Actually Do." You've probably seen it. It looks like this: what my friends think I do, what my mum thinks I do, what society thinks I do, what I think I do, what clients think I do, and what I actually do. And this meme is so popular because professional people are often quite defensive about how others see their job, and showing that you understand this is a really good way to side with your audience. It's very powerful. For example, one audience that I'm trying to reach are senior people in internal communication, which, if you've not heard of that, it's a field related to HR. And I know, based on the tool that I'm going to show you in a few moments, that one of the fears they have is of not being taken seriously. 15 years ago, a lot of the people I write for would have been those people who would have just organised the fire drill or put up posters telling people that the toilets are broken. Now their job has changed. They're much more strategic. They're working in the boardroom. So how do you think they respond when I write to them about how some people still think their job is still at that low level? Do you think that's something that gets them leaning forward and paying attention and really tuned in? I've found that it is. Here's an example. Here's a kind of email that I sent to some people on my email newsletter. It tells a story. Has this ever happened to you? A plumber arrives at your home and says, "Sure, I can fix this leak. I'm going to use this kind of pipe, but if you know better, just let me know what type of plumbing you'd prefer." And I tell them, that's never happened because plumbers are trained professionals and you let them do your job. You don't interfere with them. Now, and then it contrasts that with some of the disrespectful ways they're sometimes treated, like senior people taking the things they've written and rewriting them for no reason at all, or just treating them as some kind of internal post office rather than a strategic communications function, stuff they really hate. Now, I got a really huge response from this email. People were just replying back, and people I'd never heard of, which was suggesting that people were forwarding it on to their friends. It just really seemed to resonate. So what this illustrates is that time and time again, people will pay attention to you when you just talk about what they're secretly thinking. So if you don't know what your audience cares about, you'll fall into the trap of creating the same content and messaging as everybody else in your market. For instance, HubSpot has this little blog post generator. You just type in your topic and it will spit out 5 ideas for you to write about. And they all look like this. Now, this stuff works great if you're still living in 2007. The problem with this generic how-to content is that people are just not as two-dimensional as their job title would suggest. You see, with professional audiences, there's content that appeals to their role and there's content that appeals to their soul. And I know that sounds like something you might hear in church, but I think it's really important. So, as an example, in HR, people should be interested in using technology to improve employee engagement. They should be interested in finding and attracting top talent, understanding the changing workplace. Now, there is a place for these topics. The only problem with them is they're very, very boring, even to someone who does this for a living. Now, day to day, I've found that what audiences like this are actually interested in is the cauldron of emotions that's bubbling just beneath the surface. So with HR, for example, how they're often seen as the bad guys when they're actually the good guys. How in HR you're often mistaken for payroll and recruitment. How sexism is rife amongst senior executives. Remember that HR is still a very female industry. There are all sorts of conversations going on in their head that if you can tap into, it's just super powerful. And I've got to be honest, usually nobody else is doing this. So the question is, how do you identify these emotional levers? And how do you use them to tell your story? So for a few years now, I've helped companies with their messaging, from big outfits like Virgin Trains, EY and Bupa, to growing ones like Lexu, LoyaltyBay and Forward Partners. And last year I sat down and I tried to codify the method that I use to really boil audiences down into their basic wants, needs and desires. And I was able to create a system that anyone can use. I think anyone can use it to quickly find out what your audience cares about, and more importantly, how you can easily leverage that in your messaging. This system, it lets you glue whatever story they want to hear to the message that you want to tell them, which is a pretty powerful thing to do. If you use this correctly, it could transform your relationship with your customers and clients. It will make it much simpler and faster to communicate with your audience. If you're writing a blog post or a piece of thought leadership, you just have to scan through the templates and you've got dozens of angles to choose from within a few minutes. When you next speak in public, you'll know more or less instantly exactly what you should talk about. You just have to spend a few hours going through the method once and you'll always be able to produce messaging that's very deeply linked to the things your audience actually cares about. So if this is something that you're interested in, then I've got a bit of a deal for you. I'm basically developing this as a workshop or a training product, or it could be a digital toolkit that you can download. I'm not quite sure yet because at the moment I don't really know the best way to teach this. So what I'd like to do, if it's okay with you, is I'd like to send you this stuff for free, on the basis that you could just have a look at it and just let me know what you think of it. It will come over the next few days and weeks. There'll be some videos, there'll be a PDF toolkit, there might even be a live webinar where you can ask me questions. But I'd just like your help in figuring out the best way to go through all this so it's useful and a good experience. So if you'd like to be part of that, then enter your email address, and that will tell me where to send all this stuff. And it'd be really good to get your thoughts on this system. I think it's really useful if you work with professional audiences and you just want to find out the best way to reach them and connect with them. If you want to get in on it, put your email address in, no hidden agenda, and it'd be good to work with you. All right, thank you very much.